Hello everybody and welcome to Tiger Tales The Mysterious Origins. On this channel you will find stories that are prequels, sequels, themed all the way through and explain everything that goes on the Tiger Tales channel, the Tiger Tales Lost Stories channel and the Tiger Tales Game Over channel and all the stories that are on there. This particular storyline is the very beginning of it all and explain who the mysteries are. This follows a tale of a group of individuals and how they came to be the mysteries. Now that's all I'll say and I shall dive straight into it. So, let's dive in with The Tales of Quasha, Book 1, Hunted, Chapter 1, A Normal Day on the Job. The town known as Silverside was planted in between a forest and a mountain. The rather large town was kept out of sight and rarely had any travellers. At the top of the hill, close to the pathway that led up the mountain, was a mansion. The owner was a rich old man, who had spent his time sending dead bodies to the Lost Dimension. The Lost Dimension was a place that was created and fueled by pure negativity. It spawned the lost creatures. These demonic monsters could range from anything of that of a small insect, to full-blown civilizations, with kings, queens, and godlike beings. The entire dimension fed off negative emotions from everyone not only on Earth, but the entire universe and all of its planets. The rich old man had died in his own mansion after his ritual in the basement went horribly wrong, and the Lost Dimension portal overgrew, and the Lost Dimension started spewing out creatures which filled the basement. The basement now filled with leather skin-like dogs. At the basement entrance, dividing the lost creatures from their portal to the stairs that led to the mansion's ground floor, was 7 individuals, stood there ready to eliminate the creatures and close the portal for good. Their leader was Sparks, an 18-year-old male. He stood there with red spiky hair, a black top, combat trousers, and his shoes were white and black. Sparks had the ability to manipulate lightning in all forms. "If you guys are ready, Stuffgon, you're up," Sparks commanded. Stuffgon was the youngest member of the group, at the age of 14. He wore a grey vest and a pair of navy joggers with a very tight pair of running shoes. Stuffgon was fast. Incredibly fast. He was the fastest being on Earth. Stuffgon bolted forward, speeding past several of the lost creatures, which looked like black leather-skinned dogs. Stuffgon blared past them, and before he could do anything, he pulled out one of his knives and started slicing down the demon legs, cutting them down. "Guess that's my turn," the one called Twilight muttered. Twilight was a 19-year-old male with a big muscular body and dark brown hair that was shoulder length, which he kept tied up in a bun. He wore a leather jacket, half it was white and half it was black, a crescent moon on his chest where the black and white met. He had a rucksack on his back. He also wore camo trousers with big boots. Twilight was a master gunsman and had skills in building and using gadgets. Twilight knelt down and removed his bag. He unzipped it, pulled something out of it, and then he booted the bag across the floor towards the steps behind them. Then he unfolded the thing in his hand, and in a few hard snaps, it unfolded into an assault rifle. He then pulled out an ammo clip from his waist and loaded it into the gun. He then ran into the fold and started releasing bullets into the lost creatures. Some of them fell dead, their lifeless bodies now filled with bullets. "I better get that portal closed," the brunette girl named Rosie said to Sparks. Rosie was an 18-year-old girl with long brunette hair. She wore a purple flowery dress with a bouncy flowing skirt. She also wore dolly shoes. Rosie could control energy and had mastery in magical spellcasting. Rosie ran towards the horde and jumped up. Her eyes glowed pink and as she swirled energy around her hands, which made her float, and she hovered over the horde. She landed in front of the portal. Then she held out her hands and started muttering her spell. Sparks then looked at Desmond with a slight grin. Yeah, man, I'm on it," Desmond chuckled slightly as he started stripping off his clothes. Desmond was a lanky 17-year-old with shaggy brown hair that sat above his eyes. He wore a black jacket with a thick pair of jeans, and Desmond was a Tainted, a name given to several group of creatures that were descendants from half-human, half-lost creature beings that were killed thousands of years ago. The normal people would call Desmond a werewolf. He was born in a clan of werewolves that lived in the caravan site hidden in the forest. Desmond stripped down to his underwear. Then he growled, a deep bass-level growl. His skin burst off of him, his nails grew into long claws, his face stretched into a snout, his body tripled in size as he shifted into his lanky humanoid werewolf form. Then Desmond, in his dark brown werewolf form, ran into the horde and started tearing up the lost creatures. "You know he hates the fact that you love that so much," Huntress muttered. Sparks looked over at Huntress and grinned. "Oops," Sparks shrugged. Huntress was a 19-year-old archer and hunter. She had long black hair with neon green streaks going through it, and one side of her head was shaved. She wore hunter gear and had a quiver on her back filled with arrows. She also carried a bow and 2 hunting daggers that were sheathed on her waist. Huntress pulled out an arrow, took aim, and then she released it, and it struck one of the lost creatures in the head, killing it easily. "I can't help it, okay? It's really cool," Sparks shrugged. Huntress just rolled her eyes at Sparks, then ran into the horde and started shooting arrows into more lost creatures. "Don't need to be a jackass, bro," Leo said. "I told you can lead the team, man," Sparks replied. Nah, you've got this," Leo said with a sigh. Leo was Sparks' older brother. He was 20 and the oldest one of the group. He had light brown hair, he wore a blue jumper that had magical symbols on it, with dark blue jeans. Leo wore the jacket because it held some of his energy. Leo was an energy user. He could manipulate blue energy, was the purest positive type of energy that could be found. "Shall we?" Leo asked. "Yeah, I guess so," Sparks sighed. Leo then took a few steps forward and held out his hands and shot several energy blasts at several lost creatures, burning into their flesh as it killed them. Sparks joined his brother, then lightning started sparking between his fingers. He aimed his hand, a bolt of lightning erupted from him, and it struck one of the lost creatures. The lightning engulfed the monster, then it changed off of it and latched onto another, then another. Within seconds, Sparks had fried several of the creatures. Huntress drew her arrow and released it, and it struck one of the leather-like dogs in the shoulder. It stumbled forward. Huntress folded her bow and slotted it on her back. Then she pulled out one of her daggers and ran at the stumbling creature. She slid on her knees and stabbed the creature in the chest, then stabbed it in the head, and the body went limp. Twilight unloaded another ammo clip into several more creatures. He knelt down to reload, but one of the creatures clocked him. It snarled at him before jumping up, launching itself at Twilight. Twilight gave up on trying to reload his rifle. He threw it away, and then reached into the back of his waist with both hands and pulled out 2 pistols. He then aimed the pistols and started firing them. The lost demon crashed on the floor. It stood now bleeding from several bullet wounds. Then Twilight rolled forward, planting the tip of the pistol against the creature's chin and pulled the trigger. Its head exploded and its body dropped dead. Rosie stood there muttering her spell. The portal started wavering, started shrinking. She managed to continue her spell because Self-Gone kept running and kept slicing the demons that were trying to stop her. He was protecting Rosie from the demon attacks. She kept on taking deep breaths as she muttered another quick spell, and then she breathed out a purple mist, which burnt the demons trying to escape the portal. Then Rosie carried on muttering the spell that was closing the portal, and finally the portal caved in, and it finally closed. Rosie dropped to her knee, and the effects of the spell took her body. Stealthcon stopped next to Rosie and offered his hand. "Thanks, kid," Rosie muttered through the lack of breath. "You gonna be okay?" Stealthcon asked. "Yeah, don't worry about me, just keep running," Rosie told him. Stealthcon nodded, then bolted off again, becoming a blur once more. Leo ran up to one of the creatures. His fist started to glow blue as he became encased with energy. He then rammed his fist through a creature's chest, killing it. Then he pulled his fist out, he aimed his other hand, and shot an energy blast, decapitating another. Desmond stood there, overtowering everyone. A lost creature jumped up and dived at him. He caught it midair, and with his big, mighty werewolf claw, he crushed the monster's skull. He dropped it on the floor. Then another jumped on him and sunk its teeth into Desmond's arm. Desmond growled, a deep, animalistic growl in pain. Then he grabbed the monster, pulled it off his arm, then grabbed both ends of the dog-like creature and pulled, tearing the monster in half. He then threw both halves at other lost creatures. The team made very quick work of the lost creatures until all that was left was the alpha dog. He had longer legs, stronger muscles, and had blue tribal markings running all over his body. "Alright guys, be careful. Its fangs are laced with a natural numbing agent. It's like having years worth of pins and needles," Twilight informed everyone as he loaded his pistols with new ammo clips. Huntress aimed an arrow and released it. It took the floor in front of the alpha, which kept pacing the same spot over and over. The demon chuckled. "Before you laugh, I wouldn't get yourself Too worked up, and maybe get yourself some earplugs, Huntress chuckled. Then she pressed her watch, and suddenly the arrow emitted a high-pitched whistle sound. Both the Alpha Dog and Desmond winced. Desmond shook his head and growled. Oops, sorry, big guy, Huntress sighed. Guys, stand back. Somebody wants to kill something, Sparks told everyone. Of course, Twilight said with an eye roll. Leo nudged him. Sparks walked up to the Alpha. There's a reason why you haven't attacked yet, isn't there? You'll only fight the Alpha, Sparks told it. Then Sparks' eyes turned from his light blue to a dark red. And the Alpha is me, said a dark, deep, demonic voice coming from Sparks. His name was Fukaku. He was the demon god of destruction, one of the 3 rulers of the Lost Dimension. 13 years ago, Sparks was hit with a terrible disease, made from the Lost Dimension. Leo and Sparks' father went to the Lost Dimension and fought Fukaku and defeated him, rewarding him nothing but a spirit. Fukaku escaped and entered Earth, where he found Sparks, who was awake and very ill. Fukaku spoke to the child, and they became fast friends. A 5-year-old Sparks wanted to look after the wounded demon god, so Fukaku merged with Sparks, keeping Sparks alive, and Sparks looked after Fukaku. They both became friends and both benefited, with Sparks now hosting another soul. Fukaku, now in control of Sparks' body, looked down at the Alpha Dog. The Alpha jumped at Fukaku. He caught the Alpha and threw it back. He then aimed his palm, and a burst of demonic red violent energy exploded from his palm and hit the Alpha Dog, splitting it in half. The 2 halves slowly pulled apart and dropped to the floor. Good riddance, Fukaku muttered. Then the red eyes turned back to Sparks' bright blue, as Sparks took over his body once more. Everyone grouped up, and Desmond shifted back to his human form, ran over to his clothes, and started to get dressed. The team all then left the basement and the mansion. They all walked out to see the sheriff's car sat under the night sky, getting soaked by the light drizzle that fell upon them. Looks like you're gonna have to speak to the sheriff tomorrow, Twilight sighed. Yeah, we will, don't worry, Leo replied. Then suddenly 2 big white vans came swerving up, came to a halt, and suddenly the side doors opened and several men in bright yellow hazmat suits came spewing out of them and charged into the mansion, all carrying various tools. 3rd mission now. These guys have turned up, Huntress muttered. You know what that means, Twilight grinned at Sparks. What's he on about? Leo asked his younger brother. We made a deal. If these goons turned up 2 more times, then I'd let Twilight investigate them, and that was 2 times ago. Nobody wants to collect the dead bodies of lost creatures this much, Sparks explained. The team then all gathered around Leo, who raised his hand in a burst of blue energy. He teleported everyone back to their mansion, their home and base. Leo and Sparks' mother came from a wealthy family, and she left them a big house when she died. It had plenty of room for everyone, and Sparks thought it would be a good idea for their mansion to be their base of operation, to defend people from the lost creatures that come into play. Everyone said their goodnights, and they all went to bed. And there you have it, guys. Chapter 1 of this story. This is just an introductory chapter, of course, so please bear that in mind and hit that subscribe button so you won't miss another chapter. This is one of 3 ongoing storylines that do interconnect and interweave at some point or another, plus there are other stories that will be on this channel. The mysteries will eventually come into play, something that has affected every single storyline I've ever written. So that being said, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and of course, go check out the other 3 Tiger Tales channels. Tiger Tales The Lost Stories, and Tiger Tales Game Over. The other sort of stories I write are Ben 10, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Digimon, Pokemon, Power Rangers, Kamen Rider, Titanfall, Mortal Kombat, Kingdom Hearts, Infamous, and so many more. So make sure you go check them out. Please check out Zero the Hero podcast, but if you give a dad a podcast, go check out my Parabatai Cosmic 2637 and Mark the Red Corn Trade. That being said, I shall see you guys real soon.